Hello everyone and welcome back to another episode of
Ghetto.
My name is Hans.
I'm Edward.
And we are your hosts for now and forevermore.
Or until I choke on more saliva.
Hey, he's back again! Everybody was messaging us saying, what happened to Edward? Why is he in a better mood than normal when we started the episode? Because there was no gloom and doom in episode 26. Well, for those of you who are listening, welcome to episode 27 of TLOU, your favorite variety podcast that deals with everything to do with gaming, entertainment, technology, and lifestyle, all wrapped up in a neat and colorful
package.
Geek ribbon.
Geek ribbon, that's it.
Close enough. Hello everybody, it's so good to be back. As always, we start with the how are we doings. Edward, how you doing?
I'm good, can't complain.
That's good.
And how are you?
As always, Edward never asks, and I'm good.
I always ask, you just always talk too quickly.
I know. No, I'm good. I'm feeling a lot better. So hopefully there won't be many sniffles or blocked out coughs in this episode. But yeah, I think we're doing good. So shall we just get straight into it?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. For those of you who are our regular listeners, you'll know that we do a cool review preview section at the beginning of every episode, which sort of entails like what we have going on in our lives and what we have going on forward. And yeah, we're going to go straight into, there's actually a lot of TV stuff this week, which is rather interesting. And I see here that I'm actually kicking it off. I was still waiting for you to say to say something. Okay, cool. So as I mentioned, there's a lot of TV that's been going on. So I recently have watched, I guess I watched a little bit too much TV, but one of the big things that I was looking at is the DC Universe, especially when it comes to, you know, their shows. Edward and I have mentioned how disappointed we have been in their movies in the past.
Yep. And
unfortunately, that sentiment actually extends to their TV universe as well. Now, Edward and I will both admit that the animation is different. So when we speak about TV now, we're not talking about animated movies or animated TV series. We're talking about live action stuff. Yeah. And in this regard, I really have found DC's content to very much be lacking. I know that there are a lot of fans out there who enjoy, like, you know, The Flash and Supergirl and Arrow and Edward, help me out here.
There's Black Lightning, there's Batwoman, there's the
Gotham,
new Stargirl show.
Yeah, Stargirl. Now, it's not to say that these things are bad by any means. It's more along the lines of, I think, personally, from at least my perspective, where I've grown out of enjoying these Monster of the Week type TV series. You know, perhaps once upon a time when I was a lot younger, I used to enjoy watching that kind of a show. But over the years, where what I regard as the golden age of TV, whereby, you know, narratives have become really strong and, you know, focused, and people have moved away from producing Monster of the Week type series to these wonderful overarching stories where you have to be invested, you have to pay attention to what's going on. That in from my perspective has very much grabbed me, where I feel that by watching a show like that, I'm actually not wasting my time. I feel that I'm getting something out of it, if that makes any sense. Yeah. Edward, how do you feel? I know that to an extent you actually really enjoy the Monster of the Week format.
I actually do. I think it's all thanks to X-Files, which I grew up with, essentially. Obviously, that had its own arc and everything, but also every episode was basically just the Monster of the Week.
But the thing is, though, you know, again, that's a product of its time. So, you know, like, again, what I was saying is, like, I did once upon a time like that.
Yes.
You know, and so I'm curious to know, do you feel the same way?
I still do, honestly. Like, I enjoy watching the quote-unquote Arrowverse, I think it's still called.
Yes.
But I have grown
Actually,
over.
Is it still called it? Because I don't know
that's
anymore.
The thing,
It's
I
such
don't
a
know
mess.
anymore. But after Arrow ended, I just kind of I don't have any drive to watch it anymore, and I think it's because that era of my life, I guess you can say, is complete now. It's done, and I'm over it now.
Specifically Arrow, though.
Yeah, specifically Arrow.
And
I really loved
despite
Flash.
the fact that all of the other shows were kind of connected.
Yes. Sorry, I haven't watched Legends of Tomorrow for 2 seasons now.
Wow.
So even though it's connected, I haven't seen a single episode of the new seasons because I just don't like it anymore.
So I'm curious. Do you think you only stuck to Arrow because you had been watching it for so long?
See, that's the interesting thing, because I think, what do they call it? There's a word for it, but basically you commit so much, you feel you need to commit further, and it could be the case. But if it's any consolation, on Plex I have everything, but I've deleted Legends of Tomorrow, I've deleted Batwoman, and I've deleted what was it called? Oh, Supergirl. I've deleted Supergirl because I will continue watching Supergirl because I think it's the most highly budget version of show of them all. But I won't ever go back. Narrative aside, I won't ever go back.
You see,
except for Arrow.
This is very interesting to me because it, although slightly different, it does appear as if you're in some respects quite similar to the way that I feel, where you've grown out of that kind of very basic plot that you don't even need to be paying attention. You could be surfing TikTok, Instagram Reels in the background and still know what's going on.
Exactly.
Now, what I find interesting about that, I'm actually curious, and I'm now just thinking about this, and I guess maybe we could do extra research into it. I wonder if it has to do with how we change as adults, how our mental processes work, and how we value time.
Well, I think that makes sense.
Now, this is interesting because now we've gone on a total tangent now.
Of course.
We're not even talking on a review, but this is what Gettel's about. So, a part of me is wondering if maybe, as I've become older and I've realized the value of time, I no longer want to invest in the kind of show where it feels a little bit meaningless. So, I mean, I don't mean to, speak badly about the DC Universe, but their shows have no substance. They're just these weird, you put it on once a week and it's some new monster, that's some new drama, which is just a repeat of something you've seen before. And sometimes they will have an overarching narrative, but it's often quite weak. It'll be like a 20 episode run of which maybe 5 episodes actually deal with the main narrative. And all of the others are just monster of the week. Now, in addition to the possible, changes in maturity, maybe it also has to do with how we actually consume media. So there was a time where everyone had to watch week by week. Yeah. Whereas now you can binge watch everything. So maybe we're more used to binge watching what we want, therefore, in essence, utilizing our time better. Instead of having to put aside 1 hour a week for something, we can just put aside 10 hours in a day. Not that sounds any better, but you get what I mean. So technically, maybe that's part of it.
Technically, I think that is exactly the case because as adults, obviously we all have working days and working hours. It's much easier to set aside a single day for an entire show than it is to set aside a few hours every day.
Yes, I will admit that is very true. Granted, now I say this, but I currently do with my family at the moment. Every evening we kind of sit down and we watch at least 2 episodes of something. But it's 2 episodes of the same thing. So it's it's not like we have to break it up and we have to watch something different and then we have to wait a whole week. Rather, what we do is every evening we sit together and we continuously binge. I still say binge, even if it's not in the same day. We do 2 or 3 episodes a night together. It just, I don't know, it just feels more cohesive. Anyway, I digress. Coming back to reviews and previews. And then again, all of this really has to do with the DC Universe. And what we're basically getting at is I recently watched Doom Patrol and Swamp Thing, 2 DC series that I just want to talk about really quickly. So Swamp Thing is a show that people were talking about. It had quite favorable reviews and it had very much a horror element to it. but it was cancelled after a season. And what's fascinating about the Swamp Thing, show as a whole is that it was very different to an extent to what is currently available from the DC Universe, in the sense that it actually had, fewer episodes. There were only 10. And it had an overarching narrative. So it wasn't necessarily a monster of the week type of thing. I mean, it's kind of still there, but the overall narrative was a little bit stronger than what you normally find. So I watched the show, and I watched Doom Patrol as well. And I know this is going to sound really strange, and I don't like saying this because I really wish I could give a definitive answer, but I can't put my finger on why both of these shows, at least in my opinion, are terrible.
Yeah.
I wanted to really enjoy them. Like, when I heard about Doom Patrol, which is apparently what inspired Umbrella Academy, the comic, I thought, okay, fantastic. This must be really good. And truth be told, the first episode was incredible. And then it just devolved into this awful, puerile show with weak, every monster of the week type, scenarios. And it was just, in my opinion, dumb.
Not good.
Yeah, sorry. I mean, if you enjoy it, all more power to you. But in my opinion, I'm just like, I don't see why I would want to waste my time on this.
Exactly. Like, I think there is a big reason why. Obviously, I can't name any names because we might get sued.
Oh, yes. Okay.
But I do think the management and the production has a lot to do with it, and the showrunners. Now, Swamp Thing obviously is the only exception of this.
Look, I just
want to... But it's been cancelled.
To elaborate on Edward's very, very cryptic message is go out there and actually have a look at who the showrunners are for 99% of DC shows. Yeah. And then wonder to yourself, is there any, then it'll kind of like make sense as to why all these shows feel the same. Yeah. And why they haven't evolved. Now, bear in mind, we can't talk, it's not that all DC shows are bad. Like, the Watchmen series is excellent on HBO, honestly. And that is a DC series.
I had no idea it's DC.
So at least Watchmen is excellent in its own right, and that is a DC initiative. But again, it doesn't have any of the same showrunners as any of the other Monster of the Week type shows, and it's on HBO. So it's very adult in nature, and it's excellent. It's one of the few DC, entities I will actually say go ahead and watch, because it's very, very good with an excellent narrative as well.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay. Well, anyway, that's what I wanted to say about Doom Patrol and Swamp Thing. They're not even available locally, I don't think. In any case, they're on DC Universe and HBO Max, which technically means they should be on Showmax, but we looked and we couldn't find. So
yep.
Anyway, what is on Showmax?
Moving away from DC and HBO. Well, not technically HBO, because I reviewed Perry Mason this week.
Yes.
And that's on Showmax and HBO. It's some Mnet licensing
some DSTV
agreement.
channel that we don't care about because multi-choice.
Yeah. And it's actually quite good, but it's also very, very... What's the best way to put it? It's not for everyone. It's very noir.
It's very detailed in terms of the crime aspect, whereby shows like CSI sort of give you like a half-assed look at how things happen. Yeah. But you said that in this show, in your review, it's super, super detailed. Now,
exactly.
Does that lead into why people might not enjoy it, or is it more the subject material?
I think it's because of that. There's a reason there's a reason why shows like CSI and Law and Order all do this by the week type thing. Whereas Perry Mason is an overarching narrative. There is no Monster of the Week episode. It's all following on one another. Nothing gets repeated unless you watch that last week on stuff they tend to put in.
Yes.
It basically details one single investigation all the way through. and it's super good. It's all about a murder mystery again, as always.
Yes.
And essentially how Perry Mason. This is more an origin story. Many older TV watchers will know that Perry Mason used to be a show long ago, and that it's based on a book. Well, many books, and this is essentially a prelude to that.
Okay, that's quite cool. So it's like, as you said, an origin story for this character from a book. That's awesome.
Yes.
That's very cool. And you'd recommend people to watch it?
I would, personally. I don't think it's the best show ever, but it is enjoyable. It is entertaining. It's worth at least a watch.
If you like sort of crime dramas with like a 20s feel, 60s feel, what is it? 50s?
It's a 1920s feel. 1920s. Yeah, I think it's set in the 1920s or 30s.
That's cool.
I can't remember now.
I'm a fan of period dramas. Like Peaky Blinders and stuff like that. I mean,
it's amazing.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So if you don't mind, I'm going to just steal this away and go into my one now.
It's okay.
Talking of period dramas, I recently finished watching The Great. Which on Hulu, which is a very loosely based interpretation of Catherine the Great, one of the longest running female monarchs in Russia. She did incredible things for the country, so much so that like historians have actually labeled her as or labeled her reign as the Russian Golden Age or the Catherinian era, which is really incredible if you think about it.
Yeah,
and it was only like 30 years, so she was quite young when she passed. Anyway, The Great is really unlike any period drama I've ever seen before in my life, because it's just so wholly irreverent. And by that, I mean, it's really a dark comedy at heart. And, although loosely based on Catherine the Great, it has a lot of, pop culture idioms and phrases and swearing and even modern music all mixed with this luscious 18th century setting.
It's actually a very weird hybrid thing, kind of period drama.
It's certainly,
and
it definitely took us aback when we watched it. Because, you're watching it, it starts off like any other period drama. And then before you know it, they're swearing like troopers. And, the Peter, I think it's Peter the Great, or I forget his name, or Peter the Third, sorry. He's just screwing everything with a hole in a heartbeat. And just the way they speak and how they drink. It's just, there's so much more to it though. Like, it's very much a dark comedy. And by dark comedy, I mean that they don't shy away from joking about topics that, in most circumstances shouldn't be joked about. And one of the things that comes to mind, for example, is where one of the chamber ladies turns to Elle Fanning, who is Catherine the Great. And she's like, did you avoid rape today? And Catherine is like, yes, very much so. I managed to not get raped. And
Thank you for asking.
Yes, and how thankful they are that buttons are a thing, because when buttons go away, it's going to be much more difficult. So,
gosh.
and I know it's not, you're not meant to laugh, but just the delivery, like you're watching this, and you're like,
you are meant to laugh at it. It's making light of very dark subjects.
Yes. So with that said, it can be quite intense at times as well. So it's not that it's just a pure irrational comedy. There is actually story to it, and it's about how she forms a coup and she tries to take over. And it's genuinely very, very good. And I would say it's one of the best shows of 2020, in my personal opinion.
And that's high praise. That's
it's really, it's different. It's a comedy, but it's also like it's a dramedy. That's it. Drama comedy. I also had the pleasure of recently finishing Devs, which is another Hulu show.
Yeah.
And I have mixed feelings about it. So just overall, it's about a billionaire tech company and what they're developing there. I really can't say too much because it will give away the story. It's a very high-minded show because it deals with, quantum computing, quantum mechanics, other sci-fi elements and time, etc., time dilation more so, and so on and so forth. And it also has aspects of religion, which is something that I really wasn't expecting. But it all kind of ties together in this really interesting show about the possibilities of what quantum computing could achieve. And without giving too much away, and I really hope this is not a spoiler of any kind, it kind of feels like a Matrix origin story. I know that sounds very strange, but if you watch it, you'll get why, if you actually complete it on a whole. Now, it's shot beautifully. It has incredible audio, but there are certain, inconsistencies in the narrative where you're like, why did that character do that when the character's supposed to be so intelligent, there's a few things where you're like, that's dumb. But overall, I would say the show's quite entertaining and it's different. And I would, if you're looking for something to watch that'll really make you think, I can recommend Devs. It's quite good.
That's cool.
Something else we finished recently is Killing Eve. I'm not going to speak too much about this. This show is amazing. It's about Villanelle, who's a hit woman, and how she kind of falls in love with this journalist called Eve. It's the most macabre love story you'll ever watch. And the only reason why I want to speak about it is because it is so rare for a show to keep getting better and better, especially when it's in its third season. That's all that I wanted to say about it. It's
I was
really,
about
really
to
good.
say,
yeah. and if you're not watching it, you should be. It's good. Okay, right. Preview time.
What's coming?
Yeah, what's coming?
For one, my review of Mortal Shell.
Ooh,
we were fortunate enough to...
The Dark Souls type indie game, right?
The Dark Souls indie game. Its entire marketing revolves around the fact that it's a Souls-like.
Okay, that's cool.
And we were fortunate enough to get Xbox code for it, and I am actively reviewing it.
Yeah.
And it literally is just Dark Souls.
But
if
indie.
you've played Dark Souls before, you'll know exactly what to expect. It's got a few cool elements, so yeah.
More on that
quite
once
keen
you finish
to delve into that. Yes. Yeah. And also, you actually sent this game my way, Hans, and it's called Parkasaurus.
I was very sad to send this to you. Okay. So I've been following this game on Steam for a while. Come on, those of you who listen, you know how much I love dinosaurs. It's not even you don't even need to think about it anymore. I just do. So there's this tycoon dinosaur sim, and I was like, oh my gosh, it's amazing. And it finally came out, and I bought it without looking, and it's Windows only. So I can't play it. So Edward is going to play and review it and consistently tell me how good it is and why I should be playing it when I can't.
Hey, maybe it's super bad and you dodged the bullet.
No, I have hope. I have hope that it will be very good, much like the other dinosaur games I'm backing on Kickstarter, but we're saving that for another episode.
Yeah, that'll come. That'll come in the future.
We also have preview code for Avengers, the same game we spoke about in episode 26 with that whole Spider-Man exclusivity. So stay tuned for our thoughts on that next week. And lastly, and I feel a little bit preemptive actually, The Boys, that anti-superhero show on Amazon. That is coming out, I think, next month only. So we've kind of maybe added it in a little bit too soon. But the reason why we have is because we implore you all to watch the first season because it's really brilliant.
Please do.
It is
amazing.
Yeah, best superhero show on TV, bar none.
Yeah.
So,
there's something to be said about Watchmen and all of the actual good shows, but The Boys is just up there. It sets the bar for superhero shows.
Well, I mean,
and this isn't even about, or rather, the superheroes aren't even the protagonists this time around.
You know what it is? It's because it's adult. It's adult in nature, and there's so few adult-oriented superhero shows.
Exactly.
But it's very, very, very good. Last week, Edward was kind enough to talk to us about Lovecraft Country. Excellent TV series. You can binge it on some Mnet channel, but it's coming to Showmax middle of September and then again middle of October. For some reason, they've split up the season. So if you are in South Africa, you can watch it there. If you're abroad, you can watch it on HBO Max. It's excellent. And while we were talking about it, we realized that one of the counties is called Arkham.
Yep.
And so we posed a question. Hey, Edward, what was the question?
Is it in the same universe? Well, not the same universe. Is it based off of Arkham from the DC?
Yeah.
Turns out it is. Or rather, turns out DC Comics' Arkham is based off of Lovecraft's Arkham.
So Edward, in all of his wisdom, was actually 100% correct last week when he said that the DC Universe version of Arkham is probably based on Lovecraft's version. And we found out that it's true. Apparently, the name was picked by editor Jack C. Harris and writer Dennis O'Neil for, I think, their script of, what was it, for Joker, hey?
Yes.
Or Gotham City Supervillain, something like that.
Yeah.
And yeah, they named it, including what, Amadeus Arkham, right?
Amadeus Arkham, the guy that founded the Arkham Asylum and the Arkham facility and everything.
Honestly, that's so cool.
it's actually super cool, yeah.
So there we go. We always stick to our promises. We told you we'd all talk to you about whether or not that was the case, and now we have conclusive proof. As always, we will link in the show notes so you can go and read it up yourself. Yep. Now, with this on the mind and how that Lovecraft country actually was referenced to Arkham Asylum in DC, and the excellent games in that perspective. Anyone who's played, it's Arkham Knight, right?
Yeah, well, all of them. It's Arkham Asylum, Arkham City, and Arkham Knight.
There we go. So probably some of the best video games ever created from a Batman perspective. With that in mind, we actually caught wind recently that the same creators are making a Suicide Squad game. So we hope it'll be better than the movies, but we don't know much about it just yet, so we'll save that conversation to later. However, something that Edward and I are both very passionate about and we both really want to talk about is
The Last of Us
2.
Part 2. The Last of Us Part 2. Sorry, I just see it as one whole big thing. So
yeah. So just very, very briefly, we're not going to talk about the specifications or gameplay and that. We actually want to speak about the narrative of the title. Because as we've mentioned before, it's the first game ever to receive a perfect score on VAMers.
Yeah.
And Edward had to, in some sense, rush through it to meet embargo for the review. But I had the luxury of really taking my time. And man, did I take my time.
Yeah. What was it?
43 hours. It was 43
hours.
For what? Something that's supposed to be a 20-hour game?
I would say 25 hours max. Yeah.
Now, when I finally finished it, and I've also been very lucky because I managed to stay away from a lot of the spoilers that were online. And when I did eventually look them up, and I was quite sad to see how accurate they were. Luckily, I stayed away from it all, and I finished the game, and honestly, it's sublime, and there's so much to unpack that we almost wanted to dedicate an entire episode to it, but we figured let's actually talk about it in this one just because it's part and parcel of narratives, and this is quite a narrative-heavy episode so far. We're just talking about stories and things like that. Okay, so as we get into the discussion, we're going to talk about the original game very briefly, and then really get in depth into the second game. Edward, by all means, jump in whenever, if I miss something or whatever the case is. So
cool.
The original The Last of Us takes place 20 years after an outbreak of this cordyceps fungus, which sort of infects people, turning them into mindless zombies, essentially. And the original game is all about a young girl by the name of Ellie and a guy by the name of Joel. And Joel is basically a smuggler who's been hired to transport Ellie across America because, as it so happens, she is immune to the cordyceps virus. So she's been bitten and she didn't die. Now, the whole aim of the first game is basically to get her to the Fireflies, which is this organization that emerged out of the rubble of society. And because, they have doctors and they want to try and, create a cure to what has really decimated the globe. Now, before we go on, there are going to be a lot of spoilers. So if you haven't played The Last of Us 2, feel free to skip over this section. If you have, and you do want to hear what we have to say, please stay tuned.
Yeah.
So in The Last of Us 2, it starts off, 10 years later after the
Last of Us
first
2
game.
is 4 years after the first game.
Only 4 years. Okay, so it's not as far as I thought. So it's 4 years later, and we're back with Ellie and Joel, and it all has to do with what has transpired in the time from the end of the first game to where we are in the second game, whereby Ellie now understands what Joel did. So at the end of the first game, Joel kills the doctors who are trying to create a cure from Ellie, because it turns out that Ellie would have to die in order for the cure to be made. Now, that's a whole ethical question in its own right, which we're not going to really get into now. We'll probably touch on it a little bit. But it's basically because Joel lost his daughter at the beginning of the first game, and he then comes to regard Ellie as his daughter. So he didn't want to see her die, because apparently other patients already who were immune, and they tried making vaccines from died in any case, and there was no vaccine. Exactly. So Joel just felt, what is the point of risking another life for something that may never be? It starts off with Ellie, in the second game, Ellie finding out that Joel lied about why he did what he did, and that causes a bit of a rift between the two of them. It's very sad to see, because anyone who's played the first game obviously has an attachment to both of these characters. Then, of course, the proverbial shit hits the fan. And there are people who come into the town of Jackson where Ellie and Joel are living, or at least nearby, and a whole lot of events play out. Long story short, Joel gets killed by the hands of a woman called Abby.
Yeah.
When all of this happens, it drives Ellie on a path of vengeance, where she feels the only way she can feel any semblance of living again is by killing everyone who took Joel from her.
Yeah.
And so The Last of Us 2 begins, and it is just one of the most phenomenal games I've ever played.
It's harrowing, to say the least. This is not a feel-good game. It's not meant to make you feel good. It's meant to tell this sad tale of a girl who's hell-bent on just murder. She wants back at the people who wronged her and who killed Joel.
And in many respects, at least for the first half of the game, you very much agree with her.
Yes.
I'll be honest, I cried. When Joel died, I cried. I sobbed. My family didn't know why. I was sitting there sobbing in the couch, and they were like, "Are you okay?" I'm like, "Leave me.
Let me be." The thing is, you understand why, but there are moments that you go like, was this necessary? Was this really?
Of course.
Has this gone too far, Ellie? I think it's on day 2.
Yeah, it would be specifically talking about now. So, just to give a little bit of a heads up, in the game, and this was a surprise to many who hadn't played before, you actually play as 2 characters. You play as Ellie, who's one of the main characters from the first game, and obviously a main character in the second game. And then you play, and I'm going to say it like this because we'll eventually unravel this, but you eventually play as Joel's killer, Abby.
Yeah.
And as Edward is saying, when you're playing as Ellie, at first you're like, "Damn right, I'm going to kill those bitches. Damn right, they deserve to die." But then it does get to a point where you're like, isn't this a bit too much?
Yeah.
And that's what Edward was talking about here.
Yeah, so on day 2 of Ellie's adventure, or rather mission, not adventure, she finds one of the friends of Abby called Nora, and she hunts her down and ends up doing to Nora essentially what Abby did to Joel. And it kind of leaves you wondering, was this necessary?
Look, just to add something there, normally in a lot of video games, you have choice. A video game will let you do something or not do something. In The Last of Us 2, there is an illusion of choice, but you actually have none at all. And there's a very specific reason for this, which we will hopefully get to as we unpack the narrative a little bit.
Yeah, so what Hans is referring to is, as you get to certain points in the game, you'll be prompted with a button press, like press square to do action, and
basically smash in head.
Yes. So specifically with Nora now, Ellie hunts her down all the way to the bottom of the Seattle hospital, and what ends up happening is Nora breathes in the spores, so she gets infected. She's starting to choke on her own saliva and to turn. And Ellie is like, "Listen, I'll make this quick, or I'll make this as painful as possible, but tell me where Abby is." And then Nora is like, "No, I won't give my friends away." And the camera pans to Ellie, and it only shows her face swathed in this bright red light. You know, like that emergency light hospitals have when the power goes out. It's the same light. And the prompt says press square. And you know what's coming if you press square.
Yeah.
So you can opt not to, but for the game will stay there until you do.
Yeah.
Yeah, and with this drumming beat in the background, it makes it intense.
But not just that; it's also Ellie's expression, that pure hatred.
It's evil almost.
No, but like, look, what was weird about that scene is that some of us didn't want to press the button until Nora starts talking about how Joel deserved it.
Yeah.
Then all of a sudden
That's
you're like,
worst.
I'm gonna spam that A button until this bitch is dead.
And that's the worst thing. Like, even dying, even choking on her own spit and saliva, she's still protecting Abby and her friend.
Yeah.
And Ellie is just, this is Ellie's story. We're seeing Ellie do stuff.
We are Ellie.
Yeah, so even if we choose not to do stuff, the game will let us do that anyway.
See, so this is like the one thing that I wanted to speak about is how it's a very much an interactive medium.
Yeah.
Now, although it doesn't necessarily give you choice, the fact is the act of pressing the button effectively makes you part of the story, which is so different to consuming content like in movies and television. And it's why games, especially this one, is just so beautiful in its execution, because in that moment, you really do sympathize with Ellie. You want her to get this revenge. And so you're following her journey. You follow her as she goes. Now, of course, deep down, you know that what she's doing is not right. The amount of people she's killing and going through and the way she kills is just, it's a bit much. You know, there's revenge and then there's revenge.
In a way, she's doing what Joel did at the end of the first game.
Yes.
So she is mowing down all these people and maybe even possibly creating the circle that might come back to her in the future.
Well, now, this is the thing. So one of the hallmarks of the game is how I'll speak from my personal emotional capacity. I was distraught when Joel died. And I genuinely was like, I hate that Abby bitch. She's got to die.
Yeah.
So when it comes to the inevitable first conclusion, where you sort of stop playing as Ellie and you switch to Abby, I actually didn't want to play. I literally was like, no, I'm not playing as Joel's murderer, because that's how she had been portrayed up until that point. Yeah. And this is, in my personal opinion, the genius in Neil Druckmann's writing and the execution that Naughty Dog provided for the game. Because when you play as Abby, you see a wholly different perspective on the situations that have been unfolding. So the game technically makes you play the same 3 days you've just played as Ellie, but completely from Abby's perspective. So basically both perspectives start just after Joel dies. So, you know, when you play as Abby, it's happened after that. When you play as Ellie, it happens. Of course, you know, there are moments. There are moments that take place in the past and some that take place very much in the future, but we just want to speak about the narrative as a whole because it's very beautifully pieced together. And so you play as Abby. And as you play as Abby, you actually, and this was the weirdest thing for me. I disliked her so much in the beginning. And as I played as her, the more I came to realize she's actually the more sane of the two.
Yep.
I know that's going to sound so weird.
No, that's the gist of it, though. Literally, as you play through Abby's days, you come to the realization that Abby's story, she had her revenge. Her revenge ended with the killing of Joel.
Yeah.
So now she's this person that that's living her life after the fact. And essentially what happens is you see the same 3 days from Abby's perspective. And the more you play Abby, as the days continue and go on, you come to this realization that essentially, at least to me, but you told me that you don't believe this, but I think this story, Last of Us Part 2, is Abby's story. It's not Ellie's story, because Ellie's story, it's paused. It's literally one single revenge mission all the way through. Whereas Abby, she's got an arc. She's got a beginning, a middle, and an end.
So just to add a little bit more context to this, the doctor that Joel kills at the end of the first game just so happens to be Abby's father. Of course, it's all uncovered in the process of playing The Last of Us 2. And you realize, oh, wow, that's actually why she did what she did. Now, I do view it differently to Edward. So Edward is of the opinion that Last of Us 2 is very much Abby's story. I disagree. I very much feel that it's Ellie's story. And the reason for this, I'll try and explain. So I grew to actually love Abby as a character. The way she handles herself, the fact that she has a fear of heights. There's so many nuances to what she's like and what she does where you just can't help but actually really grow to love her in much the same way that I love Ellie. In some ways, actually, it made me question my like for Ellie, because it just seemed that where Ellie kills with wild abandon and is like a wild child, Abby has this sort of refined nature to her where she only really does stuff because she feels she has to, with the exception of killing Joel. That was a moment of weakness. Now, from Edward's perspective, I get why he considers it Abby's story. And that's because in Abby's own way, she has a path of redemption. She realizes that the revenge that she sought has actually left her more empty than she was before she had her revenge. Now, there's 2 reasons for that. Number one, it's because Ellie kills everybody she knows and loves. So basically saying, that her having committed this revenge is really hasn't helped anybody. It's actually made her more alone. And what's interesting about that is that there's a duality to Ellie, because Ellie, through her pursuing revenge, also actually ends up alone, but in a different sense. Not that she lost everybody through being killed by somebody else, but because she drove everybody away through her revenge.
Yeah.
And what's beautiful about these 2 stories and how they coincide is how in Abby's story, you come to the realization that revenge doesn't pay. And what's beautiful about that is because eventually these 2 characters meet. And what's interesting is that Ellie hasn't realized that yet. And the reason why I believe this is more Ellie's story than it is Abby's story is because although Abby's story had a nice beginning, middle, and end, you only really played it from one perspective, when that is after she's had her revenge and realizes it was a terrible thing to do, and so she seeks solace by helping other people and so on and so forth. Whereas Ellie's is far more raw, whereby she is seeking this revenge because that's all she can see right now. And that revenge actually ends up destroying her life in a way. And then eventually at the end of the game, through another cutscene which cuts back to some time in the past, it actually comes out that Ellie's revenge was inspired by regret. And that she wasn't actually looking for revenge. She didn't actually hate Abby. She hated herself. And so when she realizes that, and she only realizes that right at the end, just before she almost kills Abby. And for me, that's very powerful. That's for me is like and why I believe it's more Ellie's story, because you've seen her now go through all the motions, and you can understand Abby's emotions, as in you now realize that Ellie has finally understood what Abby has gone through and why Abby let her go twice instead of killing her. And it's actually such a sad story, and how the cycle of revenge never pays, and how regret can eat you up to the point of committing murder.
See, curiously, you mentioned this final cutscene now and everything. Remember how I continuously told you throughout your playing of the game that I think Ellie's a selfish character.
Yes.
And even at the end, I still think that. do you, or
why?
rather,
Wait. Tell me why.
okay, so that final cutscene, the cutscene where we and I'm gonna spoil even more now, but that final cutscene where we see, or rather, let me go back a bit. So throughout the game, we are led to believe that Ellie's last interaction with Joel was one of malice. It was one of an argument.
Yes.
Turns out that's not the case. In the very final moments of the game, or at least the confrontation, we find out that no, Ellie spoke to Joel in a good way, and they ended things off quite amicably.
Yes.
But see, from that entire interaction, my thinking is that Ellie was angry at Abby because because Abby removed the act of Ellie forgiving Joel.
Yes. In other words, she was robbed of the opportunity of being able to repair the relationship.
Yes. So throughout the story, I kept telling you, I think she's selfish. She is a bad, good character, if that makes sense.
Yes.
And the reason I knew the reason she's selfish is because of this final cutscene. It's because all she wanted was to repair her relationship with Joel, and Abby robbed her of this. And now she's on this weird psycho revenge story, not because Joel was killed, but because she was robbed of the opportunity to do things better herself.
Okay, so that's an interesting take. So I perceived it slightly differently.
Yeah.
For me, a part of what you've said is true.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, her motives, her actual motives for going after Abby are revenge-based, first of all, because to an extent she did feel, or does feel, that Abby robbed her of the opportunity to mend the relationship. Yes. That is 100% true. That is 100% true. However, the reason why she's, in my opinion, redeemed in that final scene is because she realizes it had nothing to do with Abby. In those final moments, she realizes that the reason why her relationship decayed with Joel and the reason why she wasn't able to repair that relationship is not because of Abby. It's because of her own actions and her own regrets.
Yes, that I get.
So,
at the very end,
So for me, she's then filled with regret, and it's self-loathing that actually ended up driving her, not Abby.
Yeah.
She used Abby as an excuse.
Yes.
So, maybe you could consider that as a selfish motive, all right? But I don't see it as such. I think that, in my personal opinion, she never realized that until the very end, where she has that last image of Joel in her mind. Up until that point, she believed Abby was the cause of her heartbreak. Abby was the cause of why she doesn't have a relationship with Joel anymore. And Abby is the reason why she was robbed of that opportunity. However, in that final moment, she realizes that it has nothing to do with Abby. It all has to do with herself. As in, she is the reason for this, and everything that she's done up until that point was selfish, and therefore she's filled with regret for what she's done.
See, because of this scene, I think the scene that follows afterwards, where she comes back home,
where she's alone,
and she tries to play the guitar and she walks off. She's understanding in this scene. Like, this scene is the only one throughout the game that shows growth to me for Ellie. Because in this one, where she walks off, it shows that she knows why she's in this predicament now. And
but that's exactly it.
And she's not angry.
And that's why, for me, it's Ellie's story.
See, I still think it's not.
So because you see, the thing is, we get to experience everything with Ellie. Her rawness in the beginning, and then her recovery at the end. And although we play as Abby, through that redemption phase, how Abby realizes what she did, revenge doesn't pay, that in a way is an allegory for what Ellie goes through at the end. Does that make sense? So
it makes sense.
It preps you for the fact that Ellie has that realization. That was my take. And that's why it was such a beautiful ending. And I was very sad for Abby because of how much, how Ellie robbed Abby of everything in the end. But Abby realizing how revenge is, it's an awful cycle of abuse, basically. And Abby breaking that cycle twice.
Yeah.
Okay. And it only took the third time for for Ellie to finally realize is what makes this story so beautiful.
Yeah.
It's the cycle of revenge is now broken. Anyway, so there we go. That was a little our discussion.
Just a little
into
one.
How beautiful of a game The Last of Us is, and how exceptionally well written. Never mind how gorgeous it looks, and just how it's one of these few masterworks of art, because gaming is an art form that pushes you to think outside of what is given to you in the narrative. You're made to think about these actions that these women are doing, what they're doing, how they're doing it, why are they doing it. And it makes you think, and perhaps us as gamers think too much about it. And that's not really what Naughty Dog wanted. But at the same time, that's what a good narrative does. It makes you think. It forces you to think out of the box and to wonder, did they make the right decisions? And how do these characters feel? And it's excellent.
It's
I hope that was an entertaining discussion.
Yeah. And if you're just joining us from the timestamps, hello and welcome. The spoilers are finally gone.
Yes, thank you. Spoilers for Last of Us 2 are gone, and now we're going to be moving into our listening segment.
Yes,
which is really interesting and fun. We have a submission from Vic Hartfeller from South Africa, and this is really, really entertaining, and it's just got to do with how the brain interprets things. So what we're going to do is we're going to play the sound, and I just want you to think what is being said, because obviously, it's more of a, in a respect, it is more of a video styled thing where you need to be watching to see it, from what I understand. But at the same time, if you could just listen to it first and then, go up and look at the wording just to see. Okay, so what do you think you heard? I'm very curious to know what our listeners think. Now, with that said, the two words which you should be hearing are either green needle or brainstorm. Could you hear one of those words? Now, the thing is, with this whole interesting, test, you actually are meant to be reading the word while you're listening to it. So do, by all means, have a look at the show notes, because we'll have the words there. And if you're watching the video, they'll be on screen. Yeah. So what did you think, Edward? Is this like gold dress, purple dress, or whatever it was?
I think so. It's all just an illusion of the brain and the eyes. I think if you look at green needle, you hear green needle. And
of course, yeah.
It's just a weird optical illusion, I guess.
Auditory illusion.
Yeah, there we go. A nice auditory illusion, yeah.
Now, when it comes to cool auditory things, there's something else that we have now. Now, everybody's familiar with Netflix.
Yeah.
Please sponsor us. So, in terms of Netflix, we know that initial Netflix opener. I'll actually play it for you all quickly. So that's the sound that happens every time a show or movie that is Netflix made comes up. Well, because Netflix is branching out into cinemas, they felt that they needed somewhat of a longer sound. And so they approached Hans Zimmer, who is phenomenal. Yeah, it's right? Amazing. One of the best, not musicians, but composers for movies and TV series. And he actually made a longer one, and we'll play it for you right now. So there we go. What did you think? is it? I mean, how do you all like perceive this? Do you think it's cool? Do you think it's unnecessary? I know Edward has a strong opinion about it.
Yeah. The thing is, I feel like when I'm watching something on demand, I should get to it as quickly as possible. So I get that this is for movies, and movies are always... Some people like to get that hype. Like, even on Plex, you can put the trailers for movies you've never watched.
Yes, yes.
I feel like if it's an on-demand thing, I want to get to it ASAP. So knowing this 1 second Netflix jingle exists, and it's going to get replaced by a 10-second jingle, it's literally 8 extra seconds I'm going to lose now. Yeah. So that's how I feel about it.
Look, I personally think it's awesome. I think it's great. I'm more than happy to sit there and have the Netflix colors beamed into my eyeballs for an extended period of time. I'm happy.
Well, look, it sounds great and it is nice. I see the appeal, but I don't think it should be implemented. As always,
you should all let us know what you think. Do you like it? Do you think they should go with the short one? Is this an irrelevant thing? I think it's awesome. I love it.
Is it a non-issue?
Yeah, is it a non-issue? So speaking of cool sounds and stuff, this is something else that I really found interesting, and it has to do with the Chichen Itza stairs at one of the Mayan ruins in Mexico. Mm-hmm. And it's just like, you know, when you think of ancient civilizations, right? We've often wondered how advanced they really are. And honestly, I've had the privilege of going to see the pyramids in real life, and I was blown away because science today can't even replicate what these people did thousands of years ago. Now, I'm mentioning this because according to these travel guides who actually take people to have a look at Mayan architecture and so on and so forth, there is a particular temple. Like I said, it's the Chichen Itza one. And I hope I'm saying that correctly. If not, I'm so sorry. Anyway, the Mayans regarded the Quetzal bird as sort of like a holy creature. And what is so fascinating about this is if you clap at the base of the stairs of this pyramid, there is actually an echo and reverberation where it actually comes back as the squawk of the Quetzal bird.
So now I'm asking, is it when you're clapping them cheeks or clapping on the temple?
Well, if you're clapping them cheeks, you know there's going to be some extra sounds involved. If you're just clapping your hands, either way, the bird gonna be singing. Look, it's absolutely fascinating, and we're actually going to play a small clip now of where you can actually hear them clapping, and then you can actually hear that like really unusual sound coming back.
Here, the sound comes back.
So there we go. Edward, what did you think?
I think it's fascinating. I really do like the sound it makes. It's weird. But
just imagine now, this is from a culture thousands of years old.
Yeah.
How did they know to build the structure in such a way that it could reverberate a clap to come back sounding like this bird?
Aliens.
It boggles the... Well, the Earth didn't end in 2012, right? Or maybe it did. Maybe we're living in an alternate future where Trump is president and coronavirus is a thing.
We're living in the Matrix.
Now, again, we have one more section for sound, and I'm going to just play this. I guaranteed, all of you out there will know where this is from. Okay, if any of you don't know what that is, then you must be born... post 2005?
Yeah.
Right?
Like 2000. When was the first iPhone? 2009, I think. Post 2009.
So that was the Nokia SMS tone.
Yeah.
Okay. It's iconic, or at least for anybody who's old enough to remember what a Nokia sounded like. But there's something very cool about it, which I had no idea. Edward, did you know?
Nope.
Do you want to tell everybody about it quickly?
I really did not know that it's actually Morse code for SMS.
That is super cool.
Yeah, it's
like,
fascinating.
Like, I mean, that tone is iconic. And I never once thought it actually meant something.
Yeah,
You know?
neither did I. Apparently it does.
Yeah,
And-
it means SMS, right?
Yeah.
It's a short message service, just SMS
It's-
in Morse code.
It's super weird, but it works, and it's an
But
iconic
it's there.
tone. So,
Well, we hope you enjoyed this sound segment of the podcast. We don't always have them, but we try to find them. And this week it was really pretty awesome. Quite a lot of stuff just happened to pop up.
yeah.
Now, something else that I have to speak about, and Edward has been hating it
Yeah.
over the last couple of days, is the Reface app.
Yeah.
Is amazing.
Is it though? Aren't you giving
so,
Russia all your face?
Okay. Before we get to that, thank you to Chantel from South Africa who actually submitted this to us, and that's how I discovered it. She sent it to us on Instagram. It is an app that takes a photograph of yourself and then superimposes it onto GIFs or videos, whatever else is available through the app. Now, this sounds a lot like, what was it, other app from before?
Face app.
Face app. Okay, well, okay.
Yeah.
So it sounds like Face app. The difference, though, is that where Face app was selling your information to Russia, the Reswap app or the Reface app doesn't, as far as we can understand. I actually did look into the T's and C's and the terms of usage and so on and so forth. And they do upload whatever image you use to their servers, obviously, because that's how they process the image. But images are deleted within 24 hours and nothing is kept. In other words, they don't keep the biometric data. But also, there is no biometric data to take from a single image because it doesn't use a 3D scan of your face, unlike Snapchat, for example. So yeah,
That's cool,
it's an incredible app, and I've been playing with it. If you're watching the video, I'm gonna throw a bunch of stuff up that I've been creating, much to Edward's chagrin.
A bunch of GIFs.
Like myself as Thor, and Edward as Playgirls, and all sorts of weird and wonderful things that I just can't help but do because it's absolutely hilarious. And if you're interested in doing something fun, I highly recommend it. I mean, there's a free version, there's a paid for version. Edward doesn't like the fact that I'm going to pay for it, but hell, I've gotten so much enjoyment out of it.
It's obviously
in the last
worth
couple of
it
days.
for you.
For me as well. Now, I know we're speaking about Reface, and it's awesome, and I dig it. It makes us think a lot about deepfakes. Now, we've spoken about deepfakes a lot in the past, and Edward found a lot of really cool stuff, or just some information about where deepfakes are actually used the most.
Yeah. So first up, did you actually know that the first deepfake came from a random Reddit user in 2007? The user's name was Deepfake, and this user just kept he kept posting images and videos and GIFs of celebrities with their faces swapped, and that's literally where the term came from. Now,
I did not know that. That's so cool.
Yeah, and today we just call it deepfake technology because that's literally what it is.
Well, they named it after him. That's awesome.
So I don't know if this guy is getting royalties or whatever, but
no, he's not.
So, I did come across a little post the other day. It's actually from an old report that was done in 2017, I believe, and so obviously stats have changed. But according to this report, did you know that most deepfakes, as in 96 to 97% of them, is actually porn?
What?
Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
Okay. But okay. I can believe that though.
You can believe that, but the thing is, when it comes to deepfake technology, the worry is always there that they might be impersonating the president of America, or they might do something.
Well, I mean, that's the real concern, whereby some secret organization is going to use the technology to change the voice and face of a random person to make it look like the president is saying something that he's not.
Exactly.
But I mean, we're not. I mean, we're kind of there, but I'm just fascinated by the fact that that's not what people are actually using it for.
Yeah. So that's obviously the worry. But thanks to how cheap and easy deepfaking has become. I mean, look at Reface now. You're literally deepfaking your face onto
You actually
GIFs.
spot on. It's very much like that. Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks to how easy it's become, people have actually started to create entire forums, entire subreddits around deepfaking stuff,
Porn.
specifically porn. And
So look. I take it this whole thing is like, you have like a crush on some celebrity, and of course you can't find anything about them online because they're decent human beings.
yes,
Yeah. So somebody be deep. So this is like Rule 34, right?
it's kind of like Rule 34. Yeah. So
I bet you could find this deepfake stuff on Rule 34.
I think it's literally just that. Like, if you go Google some celebrity on the Rule 34 website, you'll probably get deepfakes of that.
Wow.
On that note, though, it's actually Western and South Korean pop stars that are impacted the most on this.
For porn?
Yes, according to a study done by a startup called Deeptrace, this startup literally, they trace deepfakes back, and they specialize in finding and uncovering deepfakes to make sure that it doesn't get out there. And so according to them, there are these websites where people literally put their exes and their favorite celebrities on porn stars.
That is scary.
Yes.
Like we were speaking about like the president or whatever, but like I don't want to have my face on some random porn vid.
Exactly. And the worst part of it all is Deeptrace admits that they only, like this 97 to 96% count, only counts the deepfakes they could confirm. Because there
so
are
so
deepfakes,
much more probably.
Yes, there are deepfakes out there that might be so real that their AI and their professional human
Can't pick it up?
experience can't pick it up. And that's the scary thing.
Do you know what that makes me think of? It makes me think of the Disney tech that we actually spoke about in a couple of episodes back, with how the current free deepfake technology is rendered at a very low resolution, which is one of the reasons why you can always tell.
Yes.
Whereas Disney's solution is the first megapixel solution, which means it can be used for HD video.
Exactly, because it had the fur and everything.
Man.
And so imagine
there are guaranteed there's a Disney tech out there who's misusing this.
Exactly. And that's the scary thing.
Wow, no, jeez. Why always porn? Isn't this is just one of those things? Like every time there's something new, there's always something porn related.
I think it's because it's just so taboo. It's literally just people like doing taboo things with taboo subjects, and I think that's all it is.
Well, you discovered something else, or rather, you came across something else. So we love you guys. We love you folks for listening to us, and we are primarily a podcast, despite the fact that we do have video on YouTube. So with that in mind, and if you do enjoy podcasts, Edward definitely has something up your sleeve if you like NSFW.
Yeah. Okay, so welcome to today's NSFW segment. And essentially what I found, obviously Gettle is a podcast and I listen to many podcasts. Now, while I was researching this deepfake stats, I actually thought by myself, would you get something similar for podcasts? And obviously you don't. I couldn't find anything. What I did find...
Of course you searched.
What I did find...
What were you expecting? I mean, other than the kind of stuff that we talk about, what else were you honestly expecting?
I don't know. I honestly don't know. But
I mean, if you just want to listen to it, I mean, just go to your favorite website, which we all know what it is, and just press play and just listen to the auditory version.
Exactly.
I mean, it's the same thing.
Exactly. So I don't know I don't know why I was searching for it, but I was. And then I came across...
Hold on. Sorry. Wait. Before you continue.
Yeah.
Our listeners, would you like us to have a Just NSFW podcast? I mean, I have to pose the question because I enjoyed our section so much from episode 26. Thanks, Ian, from South Africa, for that revelation in your feedback. And I'm kind of wondering if maybe we have like an offshoot, or maybe once a month we have a bonus episode or something. Yeah. Let us know what you think. Definitely, like, communicate with us and let us know if there's enough popularity in it. We'll. Okay, sorry, Edward. Okay, carry on.
No, so I came across this Mashable article, which is a super old article, but mind you.
Yeah.
Talking about Quinn. Or tryquinn.com. Now, that's the name of this platform, which is literally just erotic audio. So essentially, it's audio podcasts. And
but hang on. Erotic audio?
Yes. So essentially, what it is, it's this ad-free experience for now, where you...
For now.
Yeah, for now. It's I say for now, but it's been... This post that I found is 2017, so it's been 3 years now, and it's still ad-free.
Yeah. Oh, wow, okay.
The actual founder is Caroline Spiegel, which is the sister of the Snapchat founder, Evan Spiegel.
How interesting is that?
Yeah, and what she did was she came off an eating disorder, and she was recovering from an eating disorder. That's better said.
Yes.
And what she found is that because of this, she wasn't turned on anymore by visual erotica. So what she did is
that?
She ended up like going to all your favorite sites, Pornhub or whatever, and doing literally what you just said, just minimizing the screen and listening. And she figured, hey, I might as well create a platform for this. Hence, tryquinn.com.
That's incredible to me. And, a lot of people out there are like, oh, how do you become the next billionaire? This is how. You identify a missing niche and you make it.
Yeah. Now, mind you...
Like, wow.
Mind you, apparently there are more platforms out there that does this. They just don't do it in the same breadth that
hold on.
tryquinn does.
Do you know why this is even more fascinating? And... For those of you who listened to last week's episode, we mentioned we had to push some of this stuff forward. Well, I now understand why Edward wanted to include this last week. Because in episode 26, we spoke about moaning.
Yeah.
And the different kinds. The grunts, the moans, the shouts, etc. And how the act of making them and even hearing them actually has a positive impact on the strength of the orgasm and how much you're enjoying yourself. And so it's incredible to note that they've created a platform specifically for this.
Exactly.
So you can actually have that extra stimulation. Wow, awesome.
Yeah,
that's very cool.
According to Mashable, that they managed to score an interview with Caroline, apparently the most the most searched for and most top rated categories on tryquinn.com ended up being the lesbian categories and the for women categories. According to
the
her,
most searched for.
Yes.
Okay.
According to her, it's the same with visual erotica. Now, I don't think that's entirely.
But isn't that just because men are the biggest consumers of this kind of media?
Could be, but I think her place of thinking comes from the fact that women prefer listening rather than seeing, because men are visual. Men are beasts of visual clarity or something. I can't remember the exact phrase, but essentially it comes down to the fact that women like listening, men don't. Men like seeing.
But I find it interesting then that they would choose to rather listen to other ladies.
Yes, or at least stuff made for ladies. So the lesbian stuff.
That's more so the cue.
Exactly.
Made for women. Yeah.
So the most popular category is the lesbian category, but the most seen track on the website.
But hang on. Do you know why?
Why?
I think also, and maybe this is just speaking from my own perspective.
Mm-hmm.
What sounds nicer, a lady grunting or a man grunting?
Oh, as a man, I'll say a lady grunting sounds nicer.
Obvious, but I think generally they have the female gender has much a much nicer tone to their voice.
I think it's not so much about the grunting, but the way we speak.
That's what I'm saying. Like the way the voice manipulates and changes and the pitches. It's it's more animated than a man.
Yes,
that's
a good way of saying it.
That now makes more sense to me.
Yeah.
And why that would be better listened to, because it's kind of like, if you think of accents, I know this is a bit weird, but like the South African accent is very monotonous.
Yes.
It's kind of like single leveled. But if you listen to, Australian, British, American, they have like twangs and pitches and variations. So in my opinion, like a French accent is a lot nicer to listen to.
On that note,
than ours.
On that note,
I know.
Spiegel also said that it's literally, she found that French, and I think she said Italian, is also very, very popular search for categories.
You can just imagine, be like, oh, mon chéri.
Yeah, there's a track on the platform called French Goodbye, which is a 10-minute recording of a French man speaking, and that's one of the most popular tracks on the website. But
wait, okay, hold on, wait. I'm gonna find this, and if I can find it, I'm gonna insert it right now.
I want this to be your last memory of how French wine tasted with me. I want you to see me every time you see a bottle of wine. And I want you to taste me every time you have a glass of wine.
Okay.
Well, there we go. That's the most popular track on Triquin.
It's not the most popular, so it's one of the most popular.
One of.
The most popular, though, is a track called Harry Eat You Out. And this little track is all about how a guy named Harry eats you out after a long day of work.
Have you listened to it?
I have listened to the first few minutes.
Can we play it? Is it too extreme? Or
no, it starts off nicely. It's SFW until stuff happens. So you can play a bit of it.
Oh wow! Okay. So shall we just play a little bit of the front?
Yeah. The front. Sounds
okay.
Good.
Here we go.
You like the way I'm working my way up your legs, baby? Getting closer and closer to your pussy.
And yeah.
Awesome. We'll link below if you want to keep on listening.
So because science, I did go and listen to a bunch more of these tracks. And honestly, it doesn't do it for me. I'm not a... Again, I guess it comes down to the fact that men are visual and women...
Do you know where I think this would probably be useful?
Where?
Is if somebody's reading this like erotic novel, you just play this in the background.
Yeah, I think so. Speaking on that, a website called Erotica has been around for years now, and it's literally audio books of erotic novels.
Well, we'll link to that down below. I didn't even know about that. Thank you. That was a nice surprise to throw in there.
And so this is literally it, just more porn than erotic novels, and so it's actually quite interesting, and I did like it.
Edward, that is very interesting. Thank you. That was fascinating. And on that note, we've reached the end of episode 27. And before we go, I just have to mention this. And I mean, I'm hoping it was something we would have come to ourselves. But if we didn't, thankfully, Vekard Feller from South Africa actually mentioned it to us throughout the course of the week, is that episode 27 is our 6-month-old anniversary.
Yeah.
We're 6 months old today in this recording. Now, it's interesting because, Edward, you picked up a slight discrepancy, right? You didn't think it actually added up.
No, I thought 26 was the actual thing.
Because if you divide that by the weeks, it actually comes to 52, yes? So it's very interesting, actually, how, if you look at just the dates, so we started on the 14th of February, and we're recording this on the 14th of August. It's exactly 6 months to the day. But it's 27 episodes instead of 26.
Yeah, exactly.
Anyway, it's super cool. Thank you, everyone, all of you who have been listening, and especially for the feedback. We had quite a few people in this episode that we mentioned. We love it, as always. And yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing you all again next week.
Yeah.
Thank you for listening. Ciao, everybody.
Bye.